Hi there, Greater Heartland region, Keller Williams family, or anyone that might be joining us today. We are going forward in our Ignite journey, the skills to spark a great career here in real estate for you. And so just want to welcome you, however you might be joining us today. You might be watching live, either Facebook or YouTube, based on our regional schedule that we've put out, or you might be watching this at a later point outside of the schedule. Either way, we welcome you and glad you're leaning into this all-important conversation. Session number 14, to win the buyer. All right, and in the midst of this time where we're in May, June, and July of 2022, this is a very important conversation I'm excited to bring to you today. Now, again, you might be watching this live in the Market Center amongst your peers and with a facilitator. They're great. Welcome. Can't wait to get some ahas within your group there. Or also you might be watching at a later point. Wherever you're tuning in today, want to make sure you have our participant guide. If you go to ignite.ghregion.com, click on I'm joining as a participant, you'll find the PDF participant guide there. We're on session 14. So that participant guide is the entire participant guide for all 20 sessions. So make sure you're on the page that is 14.1 so you can join in with the session on winning the buyer. So make sure you get that participant guide. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump into this all-important conversation today, winning the buyer. So here's the great news. You've been on a great journey with us, possibly, or if you haven't yet seen any of the other Ignite sessions, you might be just watching or searching from a YouTube search on working with buyers, or who knows how you might have came in if you're watching outside of our regional schedule. Yet we are going to kind of cover where have we been on this Ignite journey. So we've been through 13 sessions, and now we're on to the last 7, and we're actually focused on the 4th and final segment of Ignite, and that being the transaction portion, right? So we have covered becoming a real estate expert of choice by building your value proposition, right? That was the first segment. We've also covered lead generation, the second segment, the third segment being lead follow-up, right? And so today we're going to be focused on the transaction, specifically the buyer consultation and agreement, the agreement to work with a buyer. So from here, we'll cover the listing presentation after this session, the remaining final segment here. We'll cover the listing presentation and later sessions, also go through the close of the transactions with our buyers and sellers, right? And we'll wrap up this 4th and final segment of Ignite to be about you and your future career goals in real estate. Really excited about what we have left in the remaining final 7 sessions. Yet today, as mentioned, we're going over working with buyers, right? Winning the buyer. So by the end of the day, right, you'll see a little timeline here of what our agenda is, but let's just piece out exactly what you're going to be equipped to do today. And that is identify a qualified A buyer. Yes, the letter A buyer, capital A buyer, and follow up with an appointment, getting to the close. We spoke about that in the follow-up segment. Make sure we get to the table. So we're going to apply secondly, we're going to apply some approaches to request an appointment from an A buyer. All right, approaches the request appointment, make that close for an appointment. Thirdly, we're going to demonstrate skill in handling a buyer's reluctance to committing to you as an agent, right? And initially, and we might have some opportunity to discuss even current clients you're working with and that buyer reluctance as we see this shifting market and rising rates and what does all this mean for them and what they want to do. And fourthly, we're going to explain the buyer consultation and agreement, right? Before we get going, for any content, we want to make sure we pause. All right, pause for a second and ask yourself, okay, what do I hope to know today? I've taken the time, or maybe I've just joined in this live, or maybe at a later point just searched and came across this video. What would you hope to learn in working with a buyer and beginning that conversation to win them, to begin working with them? What do you hope? All right, so what would you like to learn more about? What skill set would you hope to be a little bit more clearly aware of to begin to practice in working and winning with a buyer? So we're going to take 3 minutes to ask yourself that question. What do you want to learn today? Jot it down in your participant guide. If you're in the Market Center, share it with somebody next to you. Okay, here's what I hope to learn today. And we'll come right back, 3 minutes. All right, welcome back. Trust you wrote some things down that you want to learn and take away from today. Here's a quote for us. The quote is from Gary Keller, and it says, "The right approach to close for a meeting is the only approach. Just ask for it." Pretty simply put, right? Pretty clear. All right, so when you find a client that is able, ready, and willing, as we discussed in the last session of our session 13 of lead follow-up, right? It just makes sense to ask when to meet. We're going to cover this today, right? But I just want to put it out there simply from words from Gary himself. It's the only right approach, right? If you think about it, you find someone who is able to buy a house, ready to buy a house, and willing to buy a house. What else would you ask them to do next? Of course, you can meet with them. All right, so we're going to cover that today. The first part of our agenda here is, of course, talking about buyers. And of course, last session, yes, we learned about qualifying buyers. Yes, we talked about sellers as well, but we talked about qualifying those buyers. Who are those ready, willing, and able? Are they ready in 60 to 90 days? Are they ready in the next 60 days or 30 days or less? Do they need to get going now? So let's talk about the qualified buyers. All right. You've seen this graphic a lot, pretty frequently if you've been on this journey of Ignite with us. All right, so a little pop quiz here. If you have been joining us, what's this graphic called? It's a model. All right, pop quiz. What's this called? I need to think about it. And it's the lead generation and database model from the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. All right, so think about this. And we covered this in session 3. So a little recap here. If you have an capital A qualified buyer, you're in relationship, you're in communication with them, what did you do in order to get to identify that A qualified buyer? Again, a recap, you've lead generated and you follow up with them. Just as the model says here, right? We're preparing this contact for conversion, that third section there. You've lead generated and lead followed up with them, assuming probably you did a really good job of putting them in their database and following up systematically with them. Also, a little recap. All right, well, what is a capital A qualified buyer? Again, recap on session 13. It's a buyer who is able, ready, and willing to do business in the next 10 to 14 days, specifically 10 to 14 days. It's a right now buyer. So a follow-up to that. How often would you follow up? How frequently would you continually reach out to them in order to get the appointment? 10 to 14 days away now. It's daily. If they're ready to go, there's someone is going to come into their world really, really soon. An agent's going to come into their world to help them out. It needs to be you. So follow up daily. Right? So that way you can set the appointment to hear their needs, understand what they're doing, and you can present your value proposition that you've already packaged and been preparing to know how to best serve them and communicate that clearly. All right, so we're going to follow through a service cycle. I love this. Lean in here now. This is so good. We're going to take a look at the 7-step buyer service cycle. It's also in your participant guide. And yes, I know you're like, oh my goodness, another model or another diagram. This is so good. So just stay with us here. You're going to find value in this. This model is proven to reap success with buyers. Just to have it come in with value. All right. So this is successful within any market and with any buyer. And this is why this is going to be so valuable for you. Okay. So we're going to go through this. Now, this is progressive here. We're going to start at the step 1 here of this cycle. And the first one is leads to appointments. Leads to appointments. Right. We're doing our lead generation. We're doing our lead follow-up in there. Right, and getting to that appointment. And number 2 in this cycle is prepare for the buyer consultation. Right, the transaction specifically, we're going to walk through how do we prepare for that buyer consultation. All right. Step 3 is the buyer consultation itself. After you prepare for it, you're going to have that buyer consultation. That's part of that transaction. Also, we're going to then, after having that buyer consultation, all important buyer consultation, we walk through and finding that home. Number 5, offer and negotiate the contract. They see a home, they like it. It's that home they've been looking for. We're going to write offers and negotiate the contract. Step 6, contract to close. Once you're under contract, move forward in value and work diligently as a fiduciary for your clients to get them to close. And then after close, we're not wrapped up. Step 7, post-close systems. Yes, we're going to continue to add value. We're not going to just drop them at the transaction. We're going to love on them for forever. Post-close systems. All right. So far in Ignite, you've prepared yourself to show your leads and contacts the value you bring, right? You bring to them on their real estate journey. You've lead generated, you follow up with the leads, you've qualified them in order to know how well you're ready to serve them and how your follow-up should be structured in order to serve them, right? You've already told them, yeah, I'm going to be here for you. You're not even my client yet. I'm here ready when you are. Right. So today we're going to move those A leads, that capital A buyer, from a lead to an appointment. From a lead to an appointment. All right, so moving along here in the agenda, let's talk about how to convert those A leads to the buyer consultation appointments. So we can make good on the title today, Win the Buyer. Win the Buyer. All right, so as we've discussed, the keys to converting an A lead are the following, and they're here in your participant guide, right? So make sure you're on a part where it says keys to converting your A buyers. One, we're going to respond right away to lead inquiries. We're not going to make assumptions on any lead inquiries based on a lead source of whether they're an A, B, or C. We're going to respond right away, assuming that there's A buyers that are coming into our world that we need to be aware of. We're going to respond right away. Number 2, get valid and complete contact information and save it in a command. Your CRM, the free one, you get it in Keller Williams, right? Or your CRM if you have a different system. Please have a CRM, not a sticky note. Right? Not a sticky note that falls between the seats of the car. I've been there, self-talk there. Number 3, determine their motivation to buy so you can speak into it. And where you get to get in the investigator mode. Love that. Number 4, then we're going to set that appointment. Right? Set an appointment for a specific time and date and as soon as possible, especially if they're buyers. We need to do this yesterday. Let's go ahead and get this knocked out. So, all right. So it's best to do, just a side note while we're here, we've talked about this. It's best to do these appointments in your market center, in your office, right, in that business setting, or if you feel comfortable, can conduct business in a public space, right, for safety reasons. Do it in a public space, right. So want to make sure that you all are aware, you're clear, right, the benefits of tracking this. A little side note here. We've talked about this. We spoke about this on the last session, in session 13. To track the buyers in opportunities. Yes, we've got them as a contact record in command. You've got an amazing pipeline tool as a business owner of the opportunities pipeline in command, right? So make sure you're tracking the buyers through those opportunities. Just a side note, just a little reminder, right? So let's say, you've got an A buyer, capital A buyer. Then, well, all right, we know the next thing is this all important consultation, getting the appointment itself. How do we do it? Well, how about we give you 7 close to the appointment tactics? Does that sound pretty good? All right. So here's the thing. Don't leave any conversation that you're having with these leads, especially as you're following up and you've qualified them if they are ready to make that transition. Don't leave any conversation without asking for the appointment multiple times, right? You're helping them out, which I know oftentimes if we're new to being salespersons, that this could be a new skill set. You're helping them. If they are ready, willing, and able in 10 to 14 days, you need to have the skill set and then remind yourself, yeah, I got to set this appointment because they need to be taken care of. They can't wait any longer. And in that, if they ask and you're asking, they say no, well, that's the worst they can do. Say no. Remember your value proposition. Remember who you are, what value you look to bring anytime that you might have that limiting belief or that fear of being told no. Remember who you are. Remember your value proposition. Right? But in that, coming back to this, don't leave any conversation without asking for the appointment. Right? If you have not set that yet, you've got to ask. Got to ask. All right. So success in this job, Yes, I know a lot of us got into real estate to get maybe possibly away from a job as an employee, but yet as a uh, self-promoted business owner now, right? You're self-employed. Success in this job is as much about mindset as it is hustle, right? All right, so remember those 6 personal perspectives. Go back and visit that session 1 of Ignite. You got to remove those limiting beliefs. You're the one that's there to help them. You got to ask them. Right? The more you do it, the easier it is, and the more people you get to help. And you're like, oh yeah, that's right. Now, I do get to help a lot of people. I'm really good at this. All right. So when you get off the phone, however you're asking for that appointment, right, you should have a clear day and time and ideal location, and with full contact information on that, right? All right. So I'm going to review a couple of these tactics here, as you see on this slide, right? So there's a reason why there's 7 close the appointment tactics, right? That there's 7 appointment tactics here. Yet the first one, show the benefits. Show the benefits. All right. So in general, right, people probably agree with me on this, but follow along. People are more likely to go along with something you suggest, right? If you explain the benefit to them. Think about the last thing that you purchased, the last service that you contracted out or you paid for, right? At some point, you understood that this would benefit you, right? Whether in a feeling of something that you've been wanting to make your life easier, whatever it is, right? Think about that last purchase. It was a benefit to them, right? Now, I think about one of the most recent purchases that I made was an Apple Watch. Yes, as a tech trainer, it probably took me however long Apple Watch has been out. Like I bought one just 2 months ago, right? And it got to the point. It's like I finally saw a benefit in it for me. That while I'm going in between appointments and being I have a lot of appointments back to back to back, right? It was helpful for me to have something on me that would buzz when my next appointment was, give me a 10-minute reminder that it was there. Granted, I have my phone, it would buzz, but there's a lot going on my phone that are distractions. Now my watch is a benefit for me to be aware that, hey, 10 minutes, you've got something important you need to be aware of. It's been awesome. I love it, right? Now, it took a while for me to be sold on that, but I didn't really recognize it was a benefit until I had that need. So showing the benefits, how can you ask for an appointment there? Here's an example script. If spending 30 minutes with me could save you hours of time and thousands of dollars in your home search, would that be a benefit to you? Well, granted, that seems like a no-brainer, right? Like, who wouldn't want to save time and save money? All of us want to be able to do that, right? Now, assuming that's kind of a presumptive close there, showing the benefits. Hey, spending 30 minutes with me could save you hours of time and then thousands of dollars in this home search, right? Would that be a benefit to you? Yes. Okay, great. Let's meet. That's a script. That's all it is. That's a show me the benefits and working with you, which is true, y'all. This is like, if you have something in your mind going on that sounds salesy or anything else, it's just because it's a script you're not comfortable with yet. One reality is if somebody's ready, willing, and able, they're purchasing in 10 to 14 days. If they meet with you right now, do you believe that it's going to save them time? Yes, it will. It would have saved them even more time if they met with you 2 or 3, 4 months ago, right? And would it save them thousands of dollars? Possibly. Who knows how urgent they would need, or maybe find themselves in a bad situation or a weak situation, a weak moment, and make a bad purchase, costing them thousands of dollars. This is why it's important for us as salespeople to get comfortable with the scripts, right? So that's a show me the benefits. Show the benefits approach tactic there. Tactic number 2 here, we'll go through this one as well, the take back close. Take back close. So this technique, right, it puts let's call it a tempting offer in front of in front of the buyer, and then subtly creates a fear that they may not be able to get it. Right? Maybe the take back close, maybe call it the FOMO close. Right? Maybe a synonym for it. Take back close, the FOMO close. Tempting offer, right, to get in front of the buyer, and then subtly creates fear that, oh, I might miss out on something. So here's an example of the script like that we could use for a take back close. Hey, I've really enjoyed talking with you. And to be honest, I don't know whether I can be of help to you or not. However, I'd be honored if we can meet to find out. How about we meet tomorrow? All right, that'd be a take back close. Example of take back close. All right, so there's other ones here to go through. We're actually doing pretty good on time. Let's go through these. All right, so the negative positive close. This is a way of backing into the appointment to the close, right? Again, backing into the appointment to close for the appointment. All right, so would you be offended? Here's an example. Would you be offended if I asked if we could meet to go over all of this in a little more detail? I'm free tomorrow. What time works for you? Would you be offended? The negative positive, right? Most people would say, I wouldn't be offended. Maybe I don't want to be offensive in saying no. Maybe that could be what they're thinking and setting that appointment. Number 4, give them what they're looking for. Give them what they're looking for. Right. So this one it's a quick kind of piquing the buyer's interest by giving them what they're looking for, information on interesting or comparable properties, for example. Right. So giving them what little bit of dangling the carrot. Right. So here's an example. Yes, let's meet at my office so I can give you specific details about that property and let you know about similar properties that are for sale that you may not be aware of. Right? What time works for you? Great. See you then. Number 5, the trial close. This trial close kind of test the waters at first, right? And in that you should find out whether you and the client actually genuinely agree for the appointment, right? So trial close. Here's an example. Can you see how receiving a list of all the new homes on the market in your price range would help you in your home search? Could you see? Well, great, let's meet. An assumptive close, number 6, an assumptive close, it assumes the close and prevents them from saying no. They might 100% be ready to and willing to go for the appointment. They're just waiting for you to ask, right? The assumptive close. It sounds like we should meet. I'm available most times of the week. So what works best for you? Great. See you then. I like this. I like the assumptive close. I always kind of, just on a side note here, I think about when my wife and I, we first kind of started kind of testing the waters, so to speak. And I was thinking about, okay, how do I ask this pretty gal out, right? Because I'm really interested. I hope she's interested in me. I don't want to get rejected. Does she feel the way I am initially feeling about her, right? Had I known what I know then, right? Once we actually went on a date and it was a great time, obviously worked out really well. I could have used the assumptive close. She was ready. She had been ready for several days before I'd asked. And she thought, well, hey, I thought you'd never ask. Probably could use the assumptive close there. Right. All right. So it's number 7, the tie down. The tie down. So the tie down, their phrase, or tie down specifically, their phrases, they kind of ask for a confirmation. Right. So an expression, you might have heard expressions like, wouldn't that be great? Right. Or maybe forming questions with, can't you? Isn't it? Wouldn't you? So ask for agreement and it's those little phrases that ask for an agreement in the form of a question, and get your customer kind of thinking of a pattern of saying yes. All right. So here's an example of a tie down, and then we'll move forward from these tactics. Hey, we'll save you hours on your home search if we meet in the office. Or somebody tried to, sorry about that. So we'll save hours on your home search if we meet in the office first. Saving time is important to you, isn't it? Great. Let's meet. Now, obviously, that one's the ones that I'm not as comfortable with, maybe more than some of the others. So again, what you're going to see through these, all 7 of these, one of those sounded more like you. Here's the good news. They're all tactics to close for the appointment. They all work. Which 1, 2, or 3? Which one, feels most comfortable, and which ones could you maybe say 2 or 3 I could see myself using, and practice every single one of those, right? Certain tactics might work on different types of clients. All right, so now when you're asking for the appointment, however skilled and however practiced you are, you're still going to be receiving some objections, right? So when a buyer objects to meeting with you, right, what are your first thoughts? Maybe I trust if you've been having 10 real estate conversations a day throughout Ignite, you've been told no. You've been told no in your follow-up. What has been your thoughts? Right? Is it rejection? Is it definitely no way, no how? Maybe you're thinking, hey, they're being unreasonable. Just catch yourself in those. If trusting, you've been lead generating, lead following up, you've been told no. It's going to happen when you lead generate and lead follow up. All right. So what have you been hearing? What are your thoughts? What's been going on in your mind, either leading up to that asking for the close or right after? Here's the thing. All those are limiting beliefs. They're limiting beliefs. Even though they said no, whatever came after that, whatever negative thought came after that, that's a limiting belief. Granted, yes, it was a truth reality that they said no in that moment, but whatever negative thought came after that was a limiting belief. Here's something that might sound a little off. All right, so stick with us here. Believe it or not, the objections, they're good. Objections are good. Anybody asking, okay, how are objections good? I like to just get a yes and get business moving. Yeah, all of us would, right? However, objections hear me now, objections are buying signals. And it's another step closer to a purchase decision. Right? Objections are simply a response to, I don't know enough yet. Right? I'd like to come up with a cool acronym for objections and something that would connect that. But the response is simply, I don't know enough yet. Or, you know what, you just haven't answered all my questions. And it's nothing on you. Don't take it personal, right? Don't internalize that, because that would only be within you. That would say, oh, I haven't done this. It's a discovery, y'all. Right? We just haven't gotten the chance to ask the right questions to bring out questions for them. All right. So instead of walking away from these objections, right, at the first sign of objection, there's a system of exploring and solving an objection right away. All right. So you'll see here, here's our 5-step system. It's so simple, y'all. Right. So hit number 1, ask questions, investigate. You're still investigative mode. Dig deeper here, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, well, hey, tell me more about that. Somebody says, no, tell me more about that. Help me understand what's preventing us from meeting today or this week. And be open, be curious. If they give you an honest answer, which they most would, if you come from just a state of curiosity instead of judgment, they'll feel that energy, that good energy, and they'll answer. Right? So number 1. Is ask the question. Ask the question why. All right, or help me understand. Number 2, empathize. Acknowledge and say, hey, I clearly understand how you feel. After you receive that, clearly understand how you feel. The number 3, identify the real issue. Now, here's the big piece, right? When you identify the real issue, this means restating what you heard and ask for confirmation. Can't miss step number 3 here. Oh my gosh, it's so important. Restating what you heard and ask for confirmation. Don't make assumptions there. All right, if you ask, hey, tell me more about that, help me understand. Listen, you've got to actively listen in that moment. And then just seek a confirmation that you heard them right. Restate it. So what I hear you saying is that you're fearful that you just can't afford a house right now. Did I hear that right? Identify that real issue and get confirmation on that. And in that, once you've identified that, you've got that confirmation. Number 4, offer a solution. Offer a solution. Now, here's going to be the challenging part. You may not have a solution in the moment. That's okay. This is probably number 4 is probably the one that scares us the most as newer real estate professionals. Hey, they're going to present me with a problem, or they're going to come up with something that I haven't heard before that I'm not going to be able to, I'm going to look dumb because I don't know what the answer is. So when you offer a solution, no, it doesn't have to be the specific solution they need right now. It could be something and you'll hear this. You'll have an objection that you've never received before, right? And once you clearly understand, you've understood, you've confirmed what the issue is. If you don't have a solution, be like, hey, you know what? I hear that now, and I can be honest, like that seems pretty. That's really unique. And I'll tell you this: I don't have a solution right now for you, but me and my team and my colleagues at Keller Williams, I want to make sure that we offer a solution for you and make sure you're served well, right? A professional doesn't have to have all the answers right now, but they're willing to be a connector for the solution they're looking for. You're just as good. You're just as awesome. You're giving just as much value to being that connector for a solution that they eventually need, that you will find for them, than having all the answers right now. Okay. Being willing to be open and transparent and confident that you'll get them the solution that you are providing, that's a professional. All right. After that, urgent agreement, right? Ask again for the appointment. So in that example, if you have a solution for that buyer, right? Maybe it's a special loan product that alleviates their concern or really their issue. Like, hey, actually, I've got some great financing that I believe would be a solution for the problem you're talking. Let's meet this week so I can walk through that, because I think that would be a benefit to you, don't you? And then ask for the appointment, set it up. Okay, so we're going to move forward here, and in this, right? Know that a lot of this is probably new tactics for you, right? The 7 tactics to close for an appointment, and knowing a system to go through those buyer objections, right? Practice responding to these objections. It's one of the best ways to demonstrate your expertise and win the business. All right. It's going to feel awkward and it's going to come off inauthentic if you don't practice those tactics and that system first or routinely before trying it out on a potential or a current customer, potential client. Right? Practice. That's why it's one of your main job descriptions as an agent, is a practice. Right? So all right, let's look through some more buyer objections here, right? Just common ones that you'll see them in your participant guide here, right? All right. So in your participant guide, you'll see some here, and some of these, right, may be familiar or maybe very recent objections that you've heard, right? So let's look through one here. It says buyer chooses to look on their own. Buyer chooses to look on their own. We got maybe some independent buyers. I'm one of those myself. I think I can, well, I've grown in this, right? But I'm one of those buyers that I'm going to research. I'm going to look. I'm going to try to discover. I'm going to gain a lot of information and familiarize myself with value and prices before I meet with a salesperson. That's just me. All right. So I would be one of these type of buyers. Now I've gotten better to lean on the professionals, and I've been able to identify professionals that will help me. But yet you might come across a buyer that chooses to look on their own. Okay. Now, look, here's an example of a script and system that you can walk through, right, to be able to deliver how you can help them in this. Right. So you could say, hey, I understand. Here are a few things to consider. Or, hey, can I share what concerns me about that? It can be very time-consuming process, right? So with my access to multiple listing service and my real estate contacts, even some off-property, depending on side point, depending on your market, right? Depending on how your state and association has withhelds. In my real estate contacts, I can search available properties for you and show you the best ones based on your needs. And this potentially saving you a lot of time and headache, right? So buyer chooses to look on their own. What can you really truly provide? I'm just thinking in the state of Missouri and in St. Louis area, as my Keller Williams offices, right, we hold a lot of market share for MLS. So we have more withhelds because we have the #1 market share in all our MLS area. We have more withhelds than anybody. So it's 100% truth that we have more access to off-market properties before they come on the market, or whatever situation is. That would be a huge benefit that I would communicate. All right. But again, check with your broker, check with your area, state, wherever you might be watching, to make sure that is compliant. but it's a big value add for us in the St. Louis area. I know a lot of our Keller Williams offices in the greater Heartland region. They hold a lot of market share in those withheld properties. It's 100% value add for you as an agent to be able to communicate that to buyer. All right, so another example here. Buyer relies searching online, right? Because similar to the other one, buyer chooses to look on their own. Buyer relies on searching online, right? So a conversation to step into there, right? Kind of interrupting that thought. Try this one out, right? The reality is that many times homes advertised online, they may not be available anymore, especially in this market. And how a property appears online is not really the same as seeing in person. Right? Maybe you experienced that in open houses. Maybe ask them, have you seen that in open houses? You go see it online and you see open house is totally different, right? So saying, hey, it's not the same as seeing in person, which you'll need a licensed agent for. And finding a house is a fun part. And we can do that very efficiently based on your expectations and needs. And once we find that house, right, the hard work is submitting an offer and getting you to the close. That's when that begins. And so this is all a part of the service and expertise I provide you as a fiduciary. Fiduciary, what's fiduciary? They get to explain that, right? So a couple of more objections there. So now I know we kind of just went through a lot. I gave you some tactics and scripts and situations. I'm going to have you pause here. I reflect a little bit. We're going to go into some ahas. All right. So in your little booklet there, you've got some space, and just maybe off to the side or write down some ahas. Think through maybe going through qualifying A buyers, understanding what an A buyer is, getting the urgency there. We walk through those 7 tactics to getting to the close. Maybe which one spoke out the most to you. Also, that 5-step system in overcoming objections. What's your ahas? What stood out so much the most so far? We're going to take 3 minutes here, write something down, share it if you're in the market center with your peers, with the facilitator there, or if you're watching this on your own at home or on the road or something, or at a later point, text somebody, say, hey, I just heard this. I want to try this tactic. I want to practice this tactic. Share that with somebody. Text them, call them, something. 3 minutes. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. All right, so you've qualified your buyer lead. You've set the appointment. Pause. Celebrate. Celebrate every conversion. It's a big deal. You've earned the right to celebrate in getting that appointment. All right. So take a moment just to soak that in and feel the win. And now, after you've done that, we got to prepare for the appointment. All right. And we got to get moving on to the appointment. All right. So we're going to walk through a buyer consultation checklist, right? So the intent, right, of this buyer consultation, this appointment, there's a lot that occurs through here. And I think a lot of us to go into that, like, hey, I got to get a signed buyer agreement, which I love that mindset, right? Like I want this client, I want to help them. First, we got to get the appointment, right? But think about appointments in your world. Think about when you make an appointment with your doctor or your dentist, right? Do they simply tell you a time and date as you head out to the office and expect you to show up at the right time on the right day? No, they follow up and manage the appointment. All right. So if your appointment's a few days away, or even if it's just tomorrow, confirm the appointment day and time. Right? Confirm the appointment. This is in your participant guides here, so make sure you're following along here, tracking along. Confirm the appointment day and time. Confirm the appointment location. Again, best in the office or in a public space. Right? Also ensure that all decision makers are going to attend. You're going to save yourself time. You're going to save them time. Make sure all decision makers can attend. All right. And fourthly here, complete your buyer guide. Your buyer guide, whether it's your buyer consultation that you've gathered from Command Designs. There's 4 buyer consultation guides that are in there. So make sure you complete that, put their name on it, personalize it for them. 5th, prepare the meeting space, right? Now, it might be in person or virtual, depending on what our COVID world looks like, maybe in the next 6 months, or goodness, who knows. But prepare the meeting space. Make sure they're aware of the meeting space. If it is virtual, confirming that they have access to Zoom if you're doing it virtually. Right? And also review the lead sheet. Right? We talked about the lead sheet in session 13, getting some qualifiers, what they're looking for. Review that, fresh in your memory to jog it when you're in the consultation. All right. Now, as we mentioned before, it's important to confirm those locations, or the location, the time, right? Now, in that, you might have an idea of meeting in the office, right? Yet it's also important to consult with the buyers on their preference in this. Like, so while we're talking in person or virtual, just a side note here, right? Lean in their preference. Right? We may not know who we get the opportunity to serve. And they might be stepping into an appointment location, whether virtually or maybe in person, and we're making an assumption that they're okay with it, right? Now, just seek that detail and what their preference would be, right? And if they're uncomfortable in that, they might likely tell you, right? But again, in all this, you want all the decision makers to be present. That's a big piece there. Big piece. All right. So moving on here. Now, if you've been, again, joining with us on this Ignite journey, you might remember this from session 4 when you developed your unique value proposition, right? And there are certain service areas that the buyers expect. We saw graphs and stats. We saw these top 10 service areas, right? So just a little recap, or a little refresher, right? These are the top areas where buyers need a great agent to help them. Let's go through these real quick. A needs analysis, number 1 on the list, and they need a needs analysis. They don't know that they need a needs analysis. They need you to hear what they need and what they get if they have that need met in the time that they want it and how they want to do it. Right, so that's number 1. 2, pre-qualification or pre-approval. Yes, make sure they're ready, willing, and big time able to do that. Big time point there. Neighborhood information, home search, being able to make an offer, negotiating on their behalf to buy a home, coordinating with vendors, whether it's from contract to close or even after post-closing, Pre-close preparation, making sure they're aware and they're ready to sign all the papers and they're feeling confident and ready and excited about that as much as they can be given their situation. Then the closing and then the post-closing. Top 10 service areas, right? Now your buyer presentation, right, which was that was number 4 on the buyer consultation preparation checklist, right? Now, your buyer consultation or your presentation there, it's going to touch on all these areas in a very personal way. That's the intent here. It should touch on all these 10 in a very personal way. It should be personal to you and your value proposition that you developed, right? And your buyers based on their lead sheet and the needs analysis. Now, there's a reason why needs analysis is number 1, right? As you hear their needs and what's most important to them, you're going to be focused and bring your value on hearing them based on what they say is important as well. So you might realize that some people might feel very passionate. They really need to understand what financing looks like and they need help with financing. So you will spend possibly more time in your buyer's consultation on that and walking through, maybe bringing in some of your lender partners in that consultation at that time. Right? But again, remember to keep your value proposition based on what you bring to the buyer, not just on how great you are. No, but the list of benefits, and these 10 are definitely those benefits included in that. All right. But again, you can customize your buyer guide and you can create these in Command. The nice thing is a lot of this is already done for you. All right. Now, I want to share this slide here. All right. Now, don't want this to become overwhelming for you, because if it's overwhelming for you to look at right now, think about how possibly the customer or client could look. 30 options. All right. Now there's a lot here. There's a lot of these table of contents. This almost looks like a novel that you're reading for a table of contents. There's a lot, 30. Right. I'm not going to read through all of these. Yeah, just to point out a few of the highlights. Walking them through the home search process, number 3, especially if they're first-time home buyers. That's going to be an important one. Right? A financial worksheet, right? If they are really curious of how this is a financial decision for them that's going to affect them long term, which it will. Interest rate chart. That'll be an important one for right now. Mistakes to avoid. That's an important one. Buyer questionnaire, that's an important one. Maybe with different school information, right? If that's important though. Here's the thing: if you're in a buyer consultation, ask yourself, am I going to be able to get through all these? Should I? The answer is no. Don't go through all these. You don't have to, right? Because you might spend time on every single one of these when all they really want to hear is about maybe 4 or 5. That's where that needs analysis really comes in, right? But here's a good thing, right? Just having this in the buyer consultation, you can present hey, there's a lot that's here, and we won't go over all this today, but I gave you this resource to connect with when you have a chance to go back and look through it. And I would encourage that before we go looking at homes, that you look through all this, right? But looking at the list, ask yourself, what does this do for your buyers? What does it give them? Does it provide value? Yeah, it does. Right? But again, not spending time on all of these. So these buyer guides that we're creating, right, whether through Command or maybe a model that you have in your office, they're going to be informative, but it needs to be informative and compelling, right? Because that buyer guide explains the process and answers questions that they have. It educates them. It shows your credibility. It gives you a guide to follow through the process, right? But it's not going to be the same for all buyers. Right? An investor, if you're working with an investor, they're probably very, very well versed on 90% of this, on all these contents that are in your buyer guide. Right? Now, here's the thing: does this mean that you have to create a completely custom guide for everyone? No, don't take that time. Don't take that time. Right? Lots of information will be the same. Right? Most will want a local market analysis, right? The local market analysis, number 7 there, based on the price ranges and then trends that they're looking at, right? But don't customize a whole buyer's guide and consultation for every single buyer appointment. Because you might spend some time drafting this, and once you get in the needs analysis, you might have spent time preparing something that was a waste of time because it wasn't important to them. The needs analysis is going to be so important in all of this, right? Now, you might be asking yourself, okay, these buyer guides, I know they're important. It's informative. It's compelling. Where can I find one? They are in Command, right? All you have to do is find them in Command and Designs, and they're totally customizable, right? There's a buyer. You can create the design. You can print them. You can deliver them virtually. They're fully customizable to match your value proposition. You can insert that in there, right? And this is going to be a tool that you use once you print it out or share it with them, that it's going to be that tangible demonstration of your expertise as you educate them. Right. Now, we're going to discuss the purpose of each section here. We're not going to review every individual page or how to edit them. Right. Yet know that there's trusting that you want a really compelling and informational buyer's guide. If you don't have one yet, go to answers.kv.com, search for buyer presentation or buyer consultation, and it's going to show you a step-by-step tutorial on how to do it. So good. So easy once you get the hang of it. And then you get to teach somebody else in your own market center. That'd be my hope. All right. All right. So in here, I'm just going to go through quickly what this buyer guide table, or the buyer guide looks like in Command, the components that you have here, right? These are the ones that you're seeing a demo of one that's in Command, but also think through what generally would make up a buyer consultation or that buyer guide. Okay, so each section here, right, it's going to help you connect and it's going to build your confidence with your value prop. And here's the good news: you can delete or reorder any of these sections, right? So ask yourself here, what do you need as you prepare for your buyer presentation? What do you need? Well, one, you've already got a buyer lead sheet that we presented in session 13. And from that, the MLS, you have access to that. Market center assets like the logo, address, and all that information. So when you're building this guide, all these pieces, things you can put in here. Now, moving on here, you got a table of contents that orders all of this. You may not use all the sections. You can take and delete some out. And then the first page here, the buyer's guide dream home. So this sets kind of the tone for the relationship, right? So you can start asking the buyers to explain their dream home buying experience. And so actually make sure in your participant guide, you should be able to follow along on this here, right? All right. So as you turn that page in your participant guide, look at this one here. Well, what would be the objective here? What would be the objective? Take a look at it. All right. So again, this page, as I said, it sets the tone, right? But it's centering this relationship on what your buyer needs, wants, right, and what they value out of the relationship, right? So you can use this page specifically to uncover the motivations, that readiness, that willingness for their move. Okay. Now, one thing that I always add, just give you kind of a little tip here. It's not a question I probably have to, or maybe even should put in the buyer guide. But as you're walking through some specific questions there, adding in a follow-up question, why is that important to you? What about being in Destin, Florida is important to you in 6 months? What does that do for your family? What does that ultimately do for you all? Asking layers deep will really cover a lot of motivation, but also emotionally connect you with them, right? So having some key questions that you go there, that you have there, but in that, what questions do you have ready that you're comfortable with and asking to go layers deep? Go 3 layers deep in all these questions. All right. Okay. So moving on here, we still have our next section. It's the preference profile. Preference profile. So this is about uncovering the expectations and preference for communication, which is going to be huge in working with a buyer. So remember, it's important to set those and revisit those over time, right after you begin working with buyers, revisit those over time. This is where you tell your client that you're available to see them every single day or whenever you turn off your phone. However you do business is where you set the expectations, right? This is where you say, hey, here's my working hours. I shut off my phone at 7 p.m. to be with my family, and I will ensure that I will return your call at 7:30, 8:30 a.m. the following morning. This is where you teach people how to treat you. Bold law there. Teach people how to treat you. Set the expectations now, right? Now, it's going to look different for everyone there, but you set your expectations, right? So in this, know that you get to control it. And if you have any possible pushback, maybe it's maybe a clear indication of maybe it's not the best relationship, or right, maybe offering that if there's any pushback from any of those times that where you're available, but hey, can we see if this would work for the first 2 or 3 weeks of working together as we have some communication there? Can we just try this and see how it goes? Oftentimes they might end up being willing to negotiate on their side of that a bit. All right. So while you're sitting in through the appointment here, and you've got your buyer guide, you're going through their needs analysis and that communication expectations. How are you going to keep track all the information that's coming through in these appointments? Well, hopefully you're taking notes through the presentation to capture the information. So this shows the buyer that their thoughts and needs are important to you. Seek agreement, right? As you're sitting down with them and you're going through the buyer guide, say, hey, I've got some important questions. I can't wait to find out because I really want to know how we can get best move forward and getting you in your home. Is it okay if I take some notes just to make sure I understand what's really important to you? Seek agreement and get the note taken. Right? So after your appointment, after you have that appointment, right, update the buyer's contact information in command, right? If they've shared with you the communication expectations, log that in a note, definitely in command. Of course, any other the preferences they have in there, you can use custom fields for that. It's really helpful. All right, so next we got again in the participant guide. Hopefully you're following along here. All right, your home wish list section. That's the next portion here. All right. This is where you're going to begin to ask buyers about their ideal home. Now, a lot of us like to jump here first. Yeah, we just had 2 really very, very important portions of the buyer guide that a lot of agents miss. Their motivation, right, of understanding what their needs are in this move and their motivation levels and that communication preference. A lot of agents skip that. And they regret not knowing what they should have asked before getting this buyer home wish list done. All right, so it's great to keep practice here with different versions of this, and yet these are questions that you can customize for your market and the information that you've already obtained from the buyer lead sheet. So if you got some questions or some of these questions answered for the buyer lead sheet, like put them in there, right? Am I right? Did you say that you needed 4 bedrooms and a quarter acre? Right? Is there anything else you'd like to add about those specific pieces or anything that's changed? Right. And so this is also this needs analysis. That's the kind of the foundation of your search and relationship with the client. Right. So you'll revisit the needs analysis throughout the home search. And this is so important, y'all. This is so, so important. Getting this down and understanding what's most important to them in the move. You're going to be able to tap into the motivation if they have any reluctancy to put in an offer, if they're getting buyer exhaustion from writing multiple offers and interest rates are rising. You get to revisit the motivation and attach it with those tangibles of the home they're looking for. All right. So in this, it's how you kind of capture this precise picture of what they're looking for in their new home, as precise as you can be, right? So we're going to look at a needs analysis and a kind of compact questionnaire later in the session, but this is where you're kind of painting that picturesque home. All right. So the preference section, it begins with a home wish list and it touches on questions about neighborhood preference, So even if your client already knows the neighborhood they're interested in, knowing what they like about that neighborhood can help you expand the search over time. We're listing strapped in this market, probably will be for a good while, as some experts have told us, right? But if we can understand what they like about that neighborhood, we might be able to expand that search, right? So what I like to do here, all right? We're going to take a pause. When we've gone through a lot of content, time to get it a little bit into action. I want us to role model this practice right here, right? So in your groups, or if you're in the market center and amongst your peers and with a facilitator there, I want to have you break up and just pair off there, groups of 2. And so what I want you to do is practice the first 4 questions, right, of this home wish list in your participant guide. Just practice the first 4 questions. We'll take 3 minutes each. So we'll take turns, do 6 minutes each, but we're going to take 3 minutes each partner, and then we'll come back. All right, welcome back. I trust that was a good exercise. We're going to get rocking and rolling. We've still got a lot of content to go through. Briefly talk about here, we do have neighborhood insights. So in command and designs, as we were talking about neighborhoods, you've asked questions in your role play about neighborhoods. Know that there's template neighborhoods and make this really easy to connect with the neighborhoods they shared with you. You can go to answers.kb.com to see those tutorials, right? But just know that there's really easy designs to create around neighborhoods. Now, moving on here. Oh, sorry, there we go. There's my neighborhood insights. Did kind of brush through that one there. All right, so on the buyer guide and knowing how home buying works. So that's kind of the next section that we're going through in this buyer guide. Let me switch the view here. So a buyer who knows what to expect is a confident buyer. Would you agree with that? Right? Think about your last purchase. All right. If you know what to expect as a buyer, you're a lot more confident buyer. Well, the same with the buyers that you're going to work with. And a confident buyer, well, they're going to be easier to work with than an anxious buyer who might throw a little bit more objections. Remember, objections come through when they just don't have maybe all their questions answered just yet. So let's do the best prep work and laying the foundation for them in this how home buying works portion here. All right. So also realize that a buyer who knows what to expect is also an educated buyer, right? And one who's not going to just do things accidentally and endanger them on their home ownership journey and waste a lot of your hard-earned professional time and risking a commission, right? So, I mean, we've seen it a lot of maybe on social media, kind of the jokes around, buyers buying a brand new $50,000 boat just, a week before closing because they, just decide to be fun to do. And then, kind of botch the closing, there, right? But again, those educated buyers aren't going to make those accidents, right? And also know that a buyer who knows what to expect because you gave them that information, that they're going to be grateful, right? And they're going to be a trusting buyer. The number one reason why people work with people is trust. They're going to work with you again and send you referrals. So walking through that portion there, that buyer guide, having that familiarize yourself, be able to communicate, it's be important. All right. Now there's one part here. This is the affiliated business arrangement disclosure. Know that this is optional, yet if you're going to communicate Keller Mortgage, right, or any other affiliated business that your market center provides, you got to put that in there, right? If there's a disclosure, put them in the buyer guide, walk through that with them, right? So just remember, right, if you're going to mention Keller Mortgage, due to RESPA, right? We as Keller Williams agent, we have to provide an ABA disclosure, right? You can find those on KW Connect. Reach out to your market center leadership if you and hopefully you at least get to help buyers understand the great value and savings they can have through Keller Mortgage. You got to have that ABA disclosure in there. Okay. So yeah, we walked through a lot of the buyer's guide, and it's been mostly about the buyer and the home ownership process. We haven't even talked about ourselves yet, right? And so when we first began Ignite, we developed that value proposition, right? Now you're ready to kind of drop this into the buyer presentation we're talking about, the buyer's guide, right? So there is a section in the command buyer guide that talks about your value proposition, how it will benefit your client, generally speaking, right? So as a new agent, you may choose to provide data about your team if you're on a team, or your market center. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Or Keller Williams International as a whole. Use the stats that are winning. When you partnered with Keller Williams, you partnered with the #1 real estate company out there. All right. We sell more homes than anybody. And you get to celebrate that. You get to share that as your value proposition. Now, of course, as your business grows, you get to track your own successes. But if you don't have the numbers, use your market centers. Use Keller Williams Internationals. Okay. So ask yourself, what other numbers could you possibly present in here? You might present as part of your value proposition. Well, I mean, it could possibly be if you have been working with some buyers that you have, 100% never left the buyer homeless, or I don't know, maybe come up with some other ideas, ask the market center there. But think about what other numbers you might track as you present part of your value proposition. Okay. All right. So also know that this section of the buyer guide, it also contains some testimonials. All right. So you can add some testimonials in there, which will be of huge value. And also know that if you haven't worked with a client just yet, a testimonial can be a character testimonial. All right. There's nothing wrong with reaching out to a former employee or employer and asking them to write a testimonial based on your character. And it needs to be truthful and not saying, hey, they helped me buy a home and that saved me thousands. Like, it's got to be true, right? But there's also a spot in there for the testimonials. All right, we're rolling again through here. And we got some other good pieces to go through. We're going to skip the ahas. If you have any written down, we're just going to write them down. We're not going to take a pause to share those. We still have some other good pieces to go through. Want to make sure we're doing this timely. All right. All right. So you've confirmed your appointment, right? And you've prepared your buyer guide. Right now, you actually got to conduct the buyer consultation. You got to conduct it. Now, prior to meeting with a buyer, you want to make sure you have, that buyer presentation, that you got a high quality copy, right, for the buyer's presentation to give to them. And if you're meeting on Zoom, right, make sure that you possibly deliver one to their home or their office so they have something tangible there that's important. And if not, and nothing else, make sure you have the PDF version. When you go to download the PDF from Designs, make sure you got the high quality one, be able to deliver it to them. All right. So think, what else might you need for this buyer appointment? Well, again, thinking about their preference in meeting, you might want to have masks or hand sanitizers or sterilized pens, right? Or maybe some beverages, right? Invite them. Hey, I'd love to have your favorite beverage when we get ready. Get that beforehand, have it ready there, right? But think about what kind of mindset do you want to have going to this buyer consultation. You want to be confident, right? Open-minded, caring, most important, right? Ready to win their business, right? Now, again, as we we're getting ready for this appointment, if you haven't had a lot of them, right? Limiting beliefs will creep in. And we talked about this a lot before, right? And this isn't the place for them at the appointment. There's just no room for it. You've won to getting them an appointment. You're going to win again. You know what you're talking about. You prepared. And you're the agent that's going to serve them the best. So there's no room for negativity or any small thinking. They've already trusted you with an appointment, which is a big deal. That's a big commitment for anyone who's making a decision in sales. All right, so you've already won that. You're going to win again. So going through here, I'm a big proponent of this. Well, what's one way to combat any negative thinking? Affirmations are something that are huge in my life, right? And I would attest that it's been one of the top ways that I defeat negative thinking. And most people do defeat negative thinking, right? There's so much that has probably told us to think negatively over the years, whether it's social media or TV, depending what we have pouring into us, or maybe past pain points of failures, or maybe somebody who told us negative things and we believed it. We carried it with us. Affirmations are 100% great way to begin to reprogram our minds of the truths that we want to bring more into reality for us, right? So here's an example of an affirmation. I am knowledgeable and caring and the best agent for these clients. They will appreciate my experience or expertise and preparation and choose me to represent them as they buy a home. That's a really powerful affirmation. What the magic happens with affirmations is it's a succinct truth that said again and again and again. It's really what we want, right? And it allows us to not to believe those lies, those limiting beliefs. All right. So write this down, circle it, but I'm going to say it again and say it with me in confidence. All right. Maybe this might feel a little bit awkward, but it's true. Y'all, if y'all are getting real estate and there are people that need your help, let's believe this, that I'm knowledgeable and caring and the best agent for these clients. They will appreciate my expertise and preparation and choose me to represent them as they buy a home. Put this in front of wherever you need to see it as many times as possible, especially leading up to the appointment. Now, side note, there are apps out there that I've got one on my phone. I'm sure there's multitude out there, but Think Up is one that I use daily for affirmations. I use it for affirmations, and I have also used them to remind me of scripts for open houses and things. You can tag and categorize them, but that's a great way for me to go through and customize my affirmations, revisit them daily. All right. So put those in there. Okay. So moving on here now, an effective delivery of that buyer presentation, that appointment. So it begins with welcoming the buyer and setting the expectations for the appointment. All right. So I want you to turn to your conversations, to the conversations in your participant guide there. All right. Now, I would love to be able to walk through this with you in person, right? And yet, just me here today with you on this live stream, right? So I'm going to walk through this, and I want you to virtually pretend you're my buyer, right? Because let's just say we're meeting over Zoom, and you just logged in, and we're smiling, right? And so we'll just do a personal one, but think through how you could do this with in person, right? All right, so here we go. I'll tell you what. In this example, I want to be helping Jimmy Buffett buy a house. I don't know why he just popped in my mind. I'm a Jimmy Buffett fan. Probably not. Maybe that's why. But here, I want to help Jimmy Buffett buy a home. All right. So, hey, Jimmy, I thank you for letting me help you. My goal is to give you a 10+ customer experience. And to do that, I'd like to get a clear idea of what you are looking for in your new home, that next step. And so with your permission, I'd like to spend the next 20, 30 minutes exploring what the right home for you would look like. We'll call this your 10+ home, okay? And with your permission, I'd like to write notes as we go along so I remember everything that's important to you. It may seem like a lot. I'd rather ask you 500 questions now and show you the right 5 homes than ask you 5 questions and waste your time showing you 500 wrong homes. We don't want that, right? So does that work for you? Now, ask yourself, how does that conversation help set buyer expectations? Knowing in here, this lets them know what is going to happen during this time and why we're doing it, why it is so important, right? So it's going to save them time later going through all those questions and why it's important to spend time with you, and to be thankful that they said yes to the appointment, all right? So here's what I want you to do. It's your turn this time around. I'm going to put you in, go into pairs if you're in your market center, and run through this conversation, right? Run through the same conversation. Let's take 2 minutes each, 4 minutes total, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Trust that felt good. Shook off a little rust, maybe. Feeling more confident next time you step into an appointment. If you really did practice that, don't you feel a little bit more confident the next time you have that appointment? Trust you would. All right, so a big part of your buyer consultation is going to be filling out that needs analysis. And again, that's where you're going to listen more than you talk, right? So go through those questions on that buyer's guide. All right. Now, we'll talk more about this needs analysis as we go through, but review those needs analysis questions and think through, how important it is to get those questions answered and how you need to be curious about them to make sure that it's a successful search, right? So that buyer can find their dream home and in the least amount of extra effort with little showings as possible, right? These are important questions. Now, an important side note here, which might seem like a little bit of a tangent here, and yet while you're going through here, you might get the question, as there's a lot of tactics that we're looking through to help our buyers and sellers, all well-intentioned. Yet we want you to be aware of something, right? Your buyers might be aware or heard of other buyers finding success through a quote unquote love letter, right? It's probably common. I think we've all heard of these maybe. And we refer to them as love letters, but you'll see here that they might be innocent, seem innocent enough, but they absolutely can lead to fair housing violations. All right, so NAR has deemed these liability letters for this very reason. All right, so these letters they can represent, where they do represent a fair housing risk, because they can easily reveal personal information that goes against fair housing, such as race, religion, family status. Right, could then be used knowingly or unknowingly in the seller's decision to accept or reject an offer. Right. So, for example, just be aware of this. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. All right. So just don't write those love letters. Right. And there's other ways that you can present yourself as a professional outside of these love letters. All right. Now, I'll say this. A great course here. I went through it myself, and then on the path of becoming the distinguished agent. Right, consider taking the courses, The Color of Real Estate and Unconscious Bias. All right, that's a great course there. You can also search for NAR buyer love letters just to get some more information on this. But here's the thing: at the end of the day, right, risking your license and risking not helping more buyers just to have one possibly. One would argue probably not even make that big of a differentiator in an offer. It's not worth it. Okay. All right. So we're going to get through to, I know we just kind of had some role playing, but we're going to move through those ahas or jot through some, and we're going to go to getting the buyer agreement signed. All right. Getting the buyer agreement signed. Now, of course, the buyer representation agreement, it's that legal document that formalizes that working relationship. With a buyer, it's that working relation with a buyer, detailing the services that you provide and their responsibilities there for the duration of that working relationship. This agreement, it protects you from spending valuable time with a buyer who ultimately chooses to work with another agent, right? But it also protects them. It's a win-win document. Now, if you're in your market center, right, because as we're in the greater Heartland, we have 5 states that we're covering. There's probably dozens of buyer agency agreements in our region or outside of our region. Make sure that you have that buyer's agreement and you're familiar with it. All right. Make sure you're familiar with it. So review that, go to the broker classes, make sure you're really keenly aware that if you have a question, you're able to speak to any section that's on that buyer representation form. Okay, so now here's a fun piece. We're gonna have an activity. So we're gonna practice the close for an agreement conversation. We're gonna practice those closing conversations to get to the agreement. All right, so you should also review and practice handling objections for that exclusivity and working with you and you working on their behalf. All right. So look for, in your participant guide, look for the close for agreement conversation there. All right. Now, what I want you to do in that conversation, I want you to role model, find somebody in person there and practice in pairs again. Maybe find a different partner this time. Let's mix it up. Find a different partner and practice each one of these. So this is going to be, we're going to take a couple of turns here. We're going to take 3 minutes each. So 6 minutes per person as we have. So in 3 minutes, switch, and we'll come right back. All right, welcome back. That's a big time practice there. That's big time practice. We're going to be wrapping up this session of Ignite by talking about wrapping up the buyer consultation. So in this, your app is of high value. If you happen to see this app that might show you some homes, I'd offer that there's a lot more there than you're aware of. All right. Now we talked about your app before, but make sure that you share your app with the buyer, show them how they can use the search features, but also they have a guide to follow along the buying process. Did you know that whatever you put in that buyer guide of your presentation, you can mirror that exact guide, that process in your app? So you could show up at the buyer's point, hey, every single thing we talked about today, it's actually in this app, so you know exactly what's next while you're looking for homes, just as a good memory jogger. Right now, side point, if you want to go level up even more so, if you've created a buyer opportunity, which you should have at this point for this buyer, and they've connected with your app, you can actually check off each one of those buyer guide stages, those steps for them. So they could open up their app like, oh yeah, we are through writing an offer. Right, go to the next one. Really cool stuff, y'all. Ask your Market Center tech trainer if you have other questions about that. Right. But it's a good value, right? Make sure they have that app in hand and get familiar with it because it's really going to anchor in and allowing you to be that tech-enabled, that tech-empowered agent for sure. All right, now we're going to wrap up here. We went through a lot. So think about this, a trust that your thinking has changed, right? You might have some new ideas, right? Or have some new mindsets around this buyer appointment and being able to win the buyer. So ask yourself, how's your thinking changed? How do you feel different? Which I sometimes we might not be talking about how we might feel different, but how do you feel differently about stepping into that appointment? Do you feel more empowered, more equipped, more aware how great this conversation one can easily happen, to put it in the books, to get it to happen, and once it comes, to be able to perform on it? So I ask, how will your behaviors be different moving forward? Hopefully you found an awareness to practice this, right? Practice and practice and practice. And what other tools or models or systems might you need? So write those down in there. Of course, we're going to move on now to this portion of finding more people, be able to set those buyer appointments with. You're going to step in to have your daily lead gen conversations, role play, forward lead gen. Also be able to input those contacts in command, write those 10 daily notes from the conversations that you're having, and the social media 10-5-1. So we're going to go ahead and hand it over to the Market Center. Bring any comments that you have. Would love to see your ahas in the comment sections down, whether you're on Facebook Live or YouTube, or even watching at a later point. I trust that this was valuable information. This is a key piece, right? This is where the professionals begin to separate themselves from the amateurs. Understanding this and getting really, really skilled, because you know it's going to help your clients immensely. And you're going to have raving fans that will be just eager to give you referrals. This is where it hits, right? So trust is a value. We'd love to reach out. If you find any successes, we'd love to celebrate with you. And we'll see you on the next one.